The gates of Camp Lejeune opened at 6:15 on a Monday morning that smelled like diesel and salt water. Chief Petty Officer Declan Marlowe stepped through them carrying three things: a sealed manila folder, a leather notebook, and a silence so complete it made the armed guards uncomfortable. She didn't announce herself, didn't need to. The MP at the checkpoint glanced at her orders, saw the official Navy letterhead, and waved her through without asking questions he probably should have asked. His eyes lingered on her uniform for half a second too long. Standard khaki, no decorations, no SEAL trident, nothing that screamed operator. Just another admin body being shuffled between bases like paperwork with legs. Exactly what she wanted him to think. Inside the main administrative building, Sergeant Reeves barely looked up from his computer screen when she handed over her documentation. He scanned the header, typed something into his system, and slid a facility map across the counter. Barracks 7, East Wing. You're bunking with the evaluation team. Dex took the map without comment, folded it once, tucked it under her arm. Cafeteria opens at 0600, closes at 2100. Don't be late or you don't eat. She nodded. Any questions? No. Reeves finally looked at her then, really looked. His eyes traveled from her auburn hair pulled tight in a regulation bun down to the boots that had seen more miles than most people's cars. Something flickered across his face. Confusion, maybe, or recognition of something he couldn't quite name. You need an escort to your quarters? I'll manage. She walked out before he could offer again. The base sprawled across North Carolina flatland like a small city built from concrete and bad decisions. Buildings numbered in a system that made sense to someone once, but had long since dissolved into institutional chaos. Dex walked the perimeter first. Habit. Always know your exits. Always understand the terrain. 20 minutes later, she found Building 12. The official brass plaque beside the entrance read, Joint Tactical Combat Training Center. Below it, someone had carved into the concrete with what looked like a knife. The Octagon. The letters were rough, angry, permanent. She pushed through the double doors. The smell hit her immediately. Sweat. Vinyl. That particular kind of testosterone-soaked air that clings to fight gyms and locker rooms. The hallway opened into a massive training bay. Mats covered the floor in regulation blue. Equipment lined the walls. Heavy bags hung from reinforced ceiling mounts like bodies waiting for punishment. But it was the board that caught her attention. Mounted on the far wall, 8 feet tall and impossible to miss, the belt hierarchy. Black belts at the top in gold lettering. 8 names, all Marines. Below them, colored belts descending in order of rank, like a feudal system made of cotton and ego. At the very bottom, a small section labeled Navy/Air Force. Someone had taken a Sharpie and written across it, Participation Trophies. Dex studied it for exactly 3 seconds, memorized every name, every rank, then moved on. Bay 3 was already occupied. 30 Marines, maybe more, clustered around the center mat where 2 men grappled with the kind of intensity that suggested this wasn't practice. This was dominance. The taller one, 6'2", and built like someone who lived in the weight room, cranked a Kimura lock on his opponent with surgical precision. Too much precision. The other man tapped. Once, twice, 3 times. The tall one held it for another full second. When he finally released, the crowd erupted. Cheers, whistles. Someone whooped like they just watched a knockout. Dex walked to the far corner, set her notebook down on the bench, opened it to a blank page, pulled a pen from her pocket, and began to write. The tall Marine noticed her after his next roll. He stood in the center of the mat, hands on hips, chest heaving, grinning at his friends like a Roman emperor surveying his Colosseum. Then his eyes landed on her. Yo! His voice carried across the entire bay. Who let the secretary in? Laughter rippled through the crowd, sharp, immediate, the kind of laughter that feeds on itself. Dex didn't look up. Her pen kept moving across the page in smooth, controlled strokes. The Marine walked closer. His gait was loose, confident, the stride of someone who'd never been told no in this particular room. He stopped 3 feet from her bench. "You lost, ma'am? Admin offices are in Building 6. Still nothing. Or maybe you're here to take notes. Write up how awesome we are for some Navy newsletter." More laughter. Someone behind him called out, "She's probably going to report us for being too badass." Dex finished her sentence, drew a small diagram in the margin. Then, without lifting her eyes from the page, spoke one word. "Observing." The Marine blinked. "Observing what?" "Training protocols." He glanced back at his friends, eyebrows raised in theatrical confusion. "Protocols. Okay, cool. You got a name, Observer?" "Chief." "Chief what?" She turned a page, started a new entry. "That's sufficient." The Marine opened his mouth to respond, but another voice cut through the tension. "Halstead, get back on the mat. You're wasting time." The speaker was older, harder, with the kind of presence that didn't need volume to carry authority. Staff Sergeant Gideon Webb stood near the equipment racks, arms crossed, expression unreadable. His eyes flicked to Dex for half a second. Something passed between them. Recognition, maybe, or warning. Halstead shrugged, flashed a grin at Dex, and jogged back to the center mat. "Just being friendly, Sergeant." "Be friendly by training." The session resumed. But every few minutes, Halstead's eyes drifted back to the corner where Dex sat. And every time, she was writing. Always writing. What he couldn't see, what none of them could see, was what she was actually documenting. Her notebook wasn't filled with administrative observations or protocol checklists. It was a technical breakdown of every fighter in the room, biomechanical analysis, weakness mapping, force vectors, and leverage points illustrated with the kind of precision that came from years of studying human movement as a weapon. Next to Halstead's name, she'd written, "Drops right shoulder 0.3 seconds before shoot. Weight distribution 70% forward. Vulnerable to pivot counters and hip rotation redirects. Ego prevents defensive adjustment." Below that, a small sketch. His body mid-takedown, arrows showing the angles of force, the points of failure. She'd been in the room for 11 minutes and already had enough data to dismantle him. By the time the session ended, 3 more Marines had tried to engage her. All got the same treatment. Minimal words, maximum disinterest. They left frustrated, confused, vaguely insulted. Gideon Webb was the last one in the bay. He waited until the others filed out toward the showers, then approached her bench with the careful gait of someone who'd learned to read danger in stillness. "Chief Marlowe." She looked up. First time she'd made eye contact with anyone all morning. "Staff Sergeant Webb. You know who I am? Your name's on the duty roster. You've been at Lejeune for 6 years, 3 deployments, 2 Bronze Stars, currently assigned as Senior Enlisted Advisor for Combatives Training." Webb's expression didn't change, but something shifted behind his eyes. "You do your homework." "It's my job." "And what exactly is your job, Chief?" Dex closed her notebook, stood. She was 5'5". Webb was 6 feet even. The height difference didn't seem to bother her. "Evaluation." "Of what?" "That depends on what I find." Webb studied her for a long moment, then quietly, "How long are you here?" "As long as it takes." He nodded slowly. "Fair enough. Word of advice, Chief. The boys in this bay, they don't take kindly to outsiders, especially ones who sit in corners taking notes. I've noticed. It's going to get worse before it gets better." "I'm aware." Webb almost smiled. "Almost. You need anything? My office is Building 9. Doors always open." "Appreciated." He turned to leave, then paused. "Your brother, Captain Ethan Marlowe. I served with him. Kandahar, 2019. Dex's mask didn't crack, but her fingers tightened on the notebook. Just slightly. Just enough. "He was a good man," Webb continued. Best combat instructor I ever met. He talked about you sometimes, said you were the real warrior in the family. He was wrong. Was he? She didn't answer. Webb nodded once, understanding the shape of grief, even when it wore silence like armor. If you need anything, Chief, anything at all. Then he left. Dex stood alone in the empty bay for 3 full minutes, listening to the hum of fluorescent lights, the distant sound of showers running, the ghost of her brother's voice in her head saying what he always said. Observe first, act last, respect always. She opened her notebook to a fresh page and wrote one sentence. Day 1, target acquired, baseline established, proceeding as planned. Then she walked out. The next 72 hours followed a rhythm so precise it could have been choreographed. Dex arrived at Bay 3 every morning at 0600, sat in the same corner, opened the same notebook, watched the same Marines run through the same drills with the same swagger. And every day, they noticed her more. By Wednesday, she had a nickname. Yo, clipboard, you actually gonna train or just keep writing your little diary? The voice belonged to Lance Corporal Quincy Brennan, 24 years old, built like a lightweight MMA fighter, fast hands and a faster mouth. He was filming Halstead's morning session on his phone, capturing every throw and submission for the TikTok account that had somehow amassed 40,000 followers. Dex didn't respond, just added a note to Brennan's page. Seeks external validation through social media metrics. Overcompensates for insecurity with volume and performance. Dangerous when cornered. Thursday morning, the mockery escalated. Halstead was demonstrating a Kimura lock on a fresh-faced private who looked barely old enough to shave. The kid's name was Garrett, 18 years old, 3 weeks out of basic training, still had that eager puppy energy that older Marines either protected or destroyed. Halstead chose destruction. He cranked the Kimura slowly, methodically, his grin widening as Garrett's face contorted. The kid tapped. Fast. 3 desperate slaps against Halstead's thigh. Halstead held it for 2 more seconds. When he finally released, Garrett sat back on his heels, flexing his fingers, forcing a laugh because that's what you did here. Pain was currency. If you couldn't spend it, you didn't belong. Dex's pen moved across the page. 0947. Halstead, excessive submission retention on PFC Garrett. Disregard for safety protocols. Potential injury risk. She finished writing and looked up. Halstead was staring at her. You grading me, scribe? The nickname hit different. More deliberate, more cutting. The whole bay went quiet. Dex met his eyes. I'm documenting training protocol deviations. Big words. Halstead walked toward her, that loose, predatory stride. Small woman, when do you actually step up? Step up to what? The map. You've been sitting in that corner for 4 days writing in your little book. You ever actually train, or you just here to judge people better than you? Dex closed her notebook, set it down carefully on the bench, stood. The height difference was comical. She barely came up to his shoulder. I'm here to evaluate the program, she said, not participate in it. That's what I thought. Halstead turned back to the crowd, arms spread wide. Navy sends us a critic who won't fight. That's rich. Laughter erupted. Loud. Performative. Dex sat back down, opened her notebook, continued writing. But Halstead wasn't done. You know what we do with people who talk but won't walk? She didn't look up. I'm sure you're about to tell me. We call them out. Friday night, open mat exhibition. You, me. 1 round. Show us what all that note-taking is worth. The bay exploded. Cheers, whistles. Someone started a slow clap that caught on like wildfire. Dex finished her sentence, drew a small star in the margin next to Halstead's name, then spoke without raising her voice. I'll need authorization from Lieutenant Ashford. So that's a yes? That's a request for proper chain of command. Halstead grinned, turned to Brennan. Quincy, you getting this? Brennan already had his phone up. Live and direct, brother. Good, because Friday night we're going to see if the Navy's evaluator can actually evaluate herself. Spread the word. Tell everyone. This is going to be legendary. The crowd dispersed, buzzing with anticipation. Halstead clapped Brennan on the shoulder, already planning his Instagram announcement. Sergeant Callum Thorne, the quiet one who'd been watching from the equipment rack, approached Halstead with a frown. Brock, you sure about this? About what? Her. She's been documenting everything, every drill, every mistake. What if she actually knows something? Halstead laughed. She's 5'5" and weighs maybe 135. I'm 6'2", 205. Physics doesn't lie, Callum. I'm just saying, those diagrams she draws, I saw them when she went to the bathroom yesterday. That's not admin work. That's biomechanical analysis. Then she'll analyze herself losing. Halstead flexed his shoulders, that easy confidence of someone who'd never been humbled. Friday's gonna be fun. Callum didn't look convinced, but he didn't argue. Dex packed up her notebook at 1100 hours, walked across base to the administrative building, found Lieutenant Donovan Ashford in his office, drowning in paperwork and what looked like his fourth coffee of the morning. She knocked once. Ashford looked up. Chief Marlowe, what can I do for you? Corporal Halstead has requested a demonstration match. Friday evening, Bay 3. Ashford set down his pen. Requested or challenged? The distinction is minimal, sir. Not to me it isn't. He leaned back in his chair. You've been here less than a week and you're already getting challenged? What'd you do? Insult his mother? I observed his training methods, sir. And? They require correction. Ashford almost smiled. I'm sure that went over well. He pulled up something on his computer, typed for a moment, then looked back at her. You want my authorization? I want your guidance, sir. This is your facility. And you're here to evaluate it, which means this is a teaching moment for both of us. He stood, walked to his window overlooking the training yards. Off the record, Chief, what's your assessment so far? The Marines have foundational skill, but leadership allows ego to override education. It's creating a toxic culture that prioritizes dominance over development. And you think embarrassing Halstead in front of his peers will fix that? I think demonstrating proper technique will establish credible authority, or it'll make everything worse. Dex didn't respond. Ashford turned back to face her. You have my authorization. Controlled demonstration. No head strikes. Immediate stop on tap. I'll be present to oversee. And Chief, sir, whatever you're planning, make it count, because if this goes sideways, we're both answering to the colonel. Understood, sir. She left his office and walked back toward the barracks. The afternoon sun sat heavy and thick over the base, turning everything the color of brass and dust. In her quarters, alone for the first time all day, Dex opened her sealed folder. Inside, official documentation. SEAL Team 7 assignment orders. Combat instructor certification. Karate credentials verified by Naval Special Warfare Command. A Purple Heart citation for actions in Syria, 2021. And beneath all of that, a letter, handwritten. Creased from being folded and unfolded too many times. The ink slightly faded, but still legible. She didn't need to read it. She'd memorized every word years ago. But she unfolded it anyway, because sometimes you needed to hold the thing that hurt most, just to remember why you kept going. The letter was dated 2 weeks before her brother died. Dex, if you're reading this, I'm gone. Don't let anyone make you small. You taught me that silence isn't weakness, it's discipline. The loudest person in the room is usually the most insecure. Be the storm they never see coming. Karate gave us the skeleton. Combat gave us the muscle. But you always had the heart. That's why you'll go further than I ever did. Make them better, even when they don't deserve it, especially then. Your brother, Ethan. Her hands shook, just slightly, just enough. She folded the letter, placed it back in the folder, closed her eyes and breathed the way her brother taught her. 4 counts in, hold for 4. 4 counts out. Repeat until the storm inside settled back into stillness. When she opened her eyes, they were dry, but something else sat there now. A question she'd been avoiding since she walked through Lejeune's gates. What if she couldn't do this? What if Ethan had been wrong about her? What if the letter was just a dead man's hope, not a living truth? What if she'd taken this assignment not out of strength, but out of some broken need to prove something to a ghost? She looked at her hands, the same hands that had written biomechanical analyses, the same hands that had killed in Syria, the same hands that had held her brother's flag at his funeral. Were they steady enough to rebuild what was broken here? The doubt lasted exactly 30 seconds. Then she stood, shook it off like water, packed the folder away. Ethan hadn't been wrong. He'd never been wrong about the things that mattered. And if she failed here, it wouldn't be because she doubted herself. It would be because the work was too hard. But she'd never met work too hard yet. Friday morning arrived cold and sharp. Dex woke at 04:30, dressed in the dark, and walked across base to Bay 3 before anyone else arrived. The bay was empty, silent, waiting. She removed her boots, stepped onto the mat barefoot, and began to move. Kata, classical, precise. Heian Shodan flowed into Teki Nidan, flowed into Basai Dai. Each form a prayer written in motion. Each strike stopping 1 millimeter from full extension. Each turn executed with the kind of control that made silence louder than sound. Her breathing was the only music. She didn't hear the door open, didn't notice the janitor who'd come in to prep the bay for the day. Herschel was 67 years old, Vietnam-era Army, spent 40 years mopping floors and watching young people pretend to be warriors. He stood frozen in the doorway, watching this woman move like water given form. When she finished, she bowed to the empty air and opened her eyes. Herschel was staring. "Ma'am, I apologize. Didn't mean to intrude." "You're not intruding. It's your workplace." That was something special, ma'am, if you don't mind me saying." Dex picked up her boots. "Thank you. I did some karate back in the day. Nothing like that, though. Your Shotokan lineage, right? Classical style?" She paused. "You know Shotokan?" "My drill sergeant in basic, 1974, he was a black belt, taught us some basics. I never forgot the way it looked when someone really knew what they were doing." He shook his head. "Those boys giving you trouble this week, they have no idea, do they?" "No. They will tonight, though." "Yes," Herschel smiled. "I'll make sure the mat's extra clean. Wouldn't want anyone slipping during your demonstration." "Appreciated." He left. And 30 minutes later, the story started spreading. By 1900 hours, Bay 3 was packed. 80 Marines, a dozen Navy personnel, base security standing by just in case. Every bench filled. People standing 3 deep along the walls. Phones out despite the no recording policy, because rules only mattered until something interesting happened. Halstead stood in the center of the mat wearing a custom rash guard with his personal logo. Halstead Combat Systems. His Instagram handle printed across the back. He rolled his shoulders, cracked his neck, grinned at the crowd like Caesar entering the Colosseum. Brennan was already live streaming. Tonight we find out if the Navy evaluator can actually evaluate herself. Stay tuned, folks. This is about to be legendary. Dex entered through the side door at 1915. She wore standard PT gear, no flash, no branding, hair pulled back tight, face completely neutral. She walked to the corner, set down her notebook, and waited. The crowd noise dropped by half. Then the door opened again, and Lieutenant Ashford walked in, his presence sucking the rest of the sound out of the room. "Listen up." His voice cut through the bay like a blade. "This is not a sanctioned event. This is a controlled demonstration under my direct supervision. Anyone who has a problem with that can leave right now." No one moved. "Corporal Halstead, you requested this demonstration?" "Yes, sir. And you understand this is being conducted under strict protocols. No head strikes, controlled takedowns only, immediate stop on tap. Yes, sir. Chief Marlowe, you consent to this demonstration? Dex stepped forward. I do, sir. Ashford pulled out a tablet, typed something, turned it toward Halstead. Sign this waiver. Halstead barely glanced at the screen, scribbled his signature with his finger. What he didn't read, what he was too confident to care about, was the clause in small print at the bottom. Participant acknowledges evaluator may possess classified credentials and specialized training that may result in significant skill disparity and personal reassessment of combat competence. Brennan saw it. Bro, did you read? Don't need to. I've got 47 consecutive wins in this bay. She's got a notebook and a bad attitude. Halstead turned to the crowd, arms spread wide. Let's do this. The crowd erupted. Ashford raised one hand for silence. Got it immediately. Chief Marlowe, remove your outer layer. Dex pulled off her jacket slowly, methodically. The compression shirt underneath revealed what the jacket had hidden. On her right forearm, a tattoo in precise Japanese kanji. Budong Shin, Fudo Shin, immovable mind. Across her knuckles, white scar tissue forming geometric patterns. The kind of scarring that came from years of breaking boards and bones. Her left shoulder, visible through the tight fabric, a small, circular scar. Shrapnel, recent enough to still be pink. The crowd went quiet again. Callum leaned toward Brennan. That's not civilian training, that's operator-level damage. Brennan's live stream chat was exploding. Someone had paused the feed and zoomed in on the tattoo. Comments flooded in. That's legit Dojo Inc. Those knuckles, though. Wait, is she actually military spec? Halstead noticed the scars. His grin faltered, just for a second. Then he forced it back. Nice ink. Doesn't change physics. Dex stepped onto the mat. No warm-up, no stretching. Just walked to center and stood with her feet shoulder-width apart. Hands open at her sides. Weight distributed perfectly, 50-50. Ashford stepped between them. Rules one more time. No head strikes. Controlled takedowns. Tap means immediate stop. You break these rules, you answer to me personally. Clear? Both nodded. Begin. Halstead circled left, loose, confident, already thinking about the Instagram post he'd make later. He feinted a jab, tested her reaction. She didn't flinch, didn't move, just tracked him with eyes that had seen worse things than gymnasium theatrics. He came in again, faster, feinted high, shot low for his signature double-leg takedown, the move that had worked 47 consecutive times. It didn't work 48. Dex stepped offline 15 degrees, just enough. Her left hand caught his lead wrist mid-extension. Her right hand guided his elbow past her center line. Then she rotated her hips. The principle was koshi nagi, hip throw, but executed with such precision it looked like physics itself had turned against him. Halstead's feet left the mat. For 0.4 seconds he was airborne, weightless, his brain struggling to understand what trajectory he was on. Then he hit. The sound was clean, definitive. Whump! Before he could process what happened, Dex flowed into Kesagatame, scarf hold, her knee posted against his shoulder, his wrist still controlled, pressure applied with surgical precision, enough to immobilize, not enough to injure. Halstead tapped, immediately, desperately. Dex released and stood in one fluid motion, extended her hand to help him up. He ignored it, stood on his own. His face had gone from cocky grin to pure confusion in the span of 3 seconds. The bay was silent. Then someone laughed, nervous, uncertain. Halstead forced his own laugh, too loud. She caught me off guard. Won't happen again. He reset, came in harder, more aggressive, tried to use strength instead of technique. Dex waited, read his movement, stepped offline again, this time into a Harai Goshi variation, sweeping hip throw, used his momentum, added her rotation, and guided him back down to the mat like she was teaching a child how gravity worked. Another pin, another tap. She released again, stood again, extended her hand again. This time he took it. When he was back on his feet, his grin was gone. His eyes had changed. The crowd had changed. Everything had changed. Ashford's voice cut through. Second demonstration. Sergeant Thorne, you're up. Callum's head snapped toward the lieutenant. Sir? You question the chief's methods. Prove they're wrong. Callum stepped onto the mat slowly. None of Halstead's swagger, just careful, analytical assessment. He bowed. Dex returned it. They circled each other like chess players considering the board. Callum tried grip fighting first, testing her controls, looking for weaknesses in her structure. Dex allowed the initial contact, then flowed. Every time he tried to establish dominance, she redirected. Every time he pushed, she pulled. Every time he pulled, she pushed. It was like fighting water. He shot for a single leg. She sprawled with perfect timing, captured his back, transitioned to a crucifix position that left him completely immobilized. She leaned close enough that only he could hear. You're thinking 3 moves ahead. Feel 1 move at a time. He tapped. She released. When he stood, he looked at his hands like they belonged to someone else. That wasn't grappling, that was physics. It's both, Dex said quietly. Ashford, final demonstration, Brennan. Quincy almost dropped his phone. What? Sir, I'm not. You filmed without authorization. You mocked Chief Marlowe publicly. You participate or you face formal charges. Choose. Quincy set down his phone with shaking hands. He was smaller than the other two. Faster, more erratic. He bounced onto the mat like a bantamweight fighter, all nervous energy and unpredictable angles. Dex watched his center mass. Not his hands, not his feet, his core, the place where all movement originated. He faked left, spun right, attempted something that might have been a flying knee if he'd committed to it. Dex sidestepped, hip-checked him mid-spin, his momentum redirected. Then she executed D Ashi Barai. Advanced foot sweep, simple, classical, devastating. Quincy went down hard. Dex dropped to one knee beside him. Didn't pin him, just posted her weight near his sternum. Close enough to control, far enough to show mercy. Speed without structure is just panic, he tapped before she even applied pressure. The bay was silent except for Quincy's breathing. Dex stood, looked at Ashford. Demonstrations complete, sir. Ashford nodded, turned to the crowd. Chief Marlowe, state your full qualifications for the record. She took a breath, then spoke loud enough for every person in that room to hear. Chief Petty Officer Declan Marlowe, SEAL Team 7, active status. Combat instructor, multi-discipline close quarters combat. Karate 5th Dan, Shotokan lineage. Certified by United States Naval Special Warfare Command. The silence shattered. Someone gasped, someone swore. Someone's phone clattered to the floor. Dex reached into her jacket pocket, pulled out the folder, opened it, held up a certificate. Purple Heart. Below it a photo. Dex in dress whites receiving the medal from an admiral whose face was blurred for security purposes. Staff Sergeant Webb stepped forward from where he'd been watching near the door. Her call sign in the teams, he said to the crowd, is Scalpel, because she cuts clean. Every eye in the room was on her now. Halstead's voice cracked when he finally spoke. Why didn't you tell us? Dex met his eyes. You didn't ask. You saw a woman with a clipboard and built a fantasy around your assumptions. Brennan sat up slowly. You were harassing a senior evaluator, filming without consent, creating a hostile work environment. Her voice didn't rise, didn't need to. That's not training, that's abuse disguised as tradition. We didn't know. You didn't care to know. There's a difference. Webb stepped forward again. Her brother was Captain Ethan Marlowe, DEVGRU, Navy Cross recipient, Killed in action, Afghanistan, 2019. He pulled up his phone, projected an image onto the wall screen that someone had set up for Brennan's live stream. The photo showed a younger Ethan in dress uniform receiving the Navy Cross. The citation beneath it: for developing the Marlow Close Quarters Combat Method, now taught across Joint Special Operations Command. Dex's voice finally showed something other than steel. He taught me karate was the skeleton. Everything else is just muscle memory built on that foundation. The room had gone so quiet you could hear the ventilation system. Ashford let the silence sit for 5 more seconds. Then, "Bay is dismissed. Everyone out. Now." The crowd filed out in stunned silence. When the room was empty except for Ashford, Webb, and the 3 Marines, the lieutenant spoke. "You 3, conference room, 0800 Monday. Bring your service records. You're going to need them." They left. Only Dex and Webb remained. Webb walked over to where she stood in the center of the mat. "You okay?" "I'm fine." "That wasn't easy, exposing yourself like that." "It was necessary. Ethan would be proud." Dex's jaw tightened, just barely. "Don't." "Sorry." She picked up her notebook, her jacket, started toward the door. "Chief," Webb called after her. She stopped, didn't turn around. "What happens Monday?" "That depends on them." Then she walked out into the North Carolina night, leaving Webb alone in a bay that would never feel quite the same again. In her quarters, Dex sat on the edge of her rack and opened the letter one more time. Be the storm they never see coming. She folded it carefully, placed it back in the folder, and allowed herself exactly 60 seconds to cry for a brother who'd taught her how to fight, but never got to see her become the warrior he always said she'd be. Then she dried her eyes, took 3 deep breaths, and began preparing for Monday. Because the storm had arrived, now came the real work. Monday morning arrived with the weight of consequence. At 0745, 3 Marines stood outside Conference Room B in Building 9. Dress uniforms, spit-shine boots, spines straight, faces carved from stone and regret. None of them spoke. At 0758, the door opened. Lieutenant Ashford stood there holding a tablet and an expression that could have etched glass. Inside, they filed in. The conference room was small, windowless, lit by fluorescents that hummed like insects trapped in amber. A rectangular table dominated the space. 6 chairs, 4 of them occupied. Ashford at the head, Staff Sergeant Webb to his right, a JAG officer, Captain Winters, to his left. And at the far end, back straight, hands folded on the table, Chief Petty Officer Declan Marlowe. She didn't look at them when they entered. The 3 Marines sat. Ashford let the silence build for 10 full seconds. Then he tapped his tablet and a video began playing on the wall screen. Bay 3, Thursday morning. Brock applying the Kimura to Private Garrett. The angle was perfect. High-mounted camera, crystal clear resolution. You could see everything. The excessive torque, Garrett's face contorting. The 3 frantic taps. Brock holding for 2 more seconds. The forced laugh afterward. Timestamp, 0947. The video stopped. Ashford tapped again. New footage. Quincy filming Dex in the cafeteria, zooming in on her eating alone. The audio captured. Navy doing recon on chicken nuggets. Laughter from whoever was watching over his shoulder. Timestamp, 1214. Stop. Another tap. Another video. Callum and Brock in the locker room, Friday afternoon. Audio only this time, but clear enough. Brock's voice. She's 5'5" and weighs maybe 135. I'm 6'2", 205. Physics doesn't lie. Callum's response. What if she actually knows something? Brock. Then she'll analyze herself losing. Stop. The silence in the room had weight now. Pressure. The kind that made breathing feel optional. Captain Winters spoke for the first time. Her voice was surgical. This facility has full video surveillance, audio in common areas. All footage is stored for 90 days and reviewed weekly for training quality assurance. She looked at each Marine in turn. You were warned about this during orientation. You signed acknowledgement forms. Did you forget? Or did you simply not care? No one answered. Winters continued. Over the past week, we've documented 17 instances of harassment directed at Chief Marlowe, 12 unauthorized recording incidents, 4 safety protocol violations during training, and 1 formal challenge issued in what can only be described as a hostile work environment designed to humiliate a senior evaluator. She tapped her own tablet. A document appeared on screen. These are the charges being considered. Article 92, failure to obey order or regulation. Article 93, cruelty and maltreatment. Article 134, general article covering conduct unbecoming. Brock's face had gone pale. Quincy looked like he might be sick. Callum stared at the table. Ashford leaned forward. Before Captain Winters proceeds, Chief Marlowe has something to say. You will listen without interruption. Dex stood. She didn't walk around the table, didn't move toward them, just stood at her end and spoke with the kind of calm that made fury look like weakness. I was sent here by Naval Special Warfare Command to evaluate this facility for potential closure. Brock's head snapped up. The Joint Tactical Combat Training Center was flagged 6 months ago following 3 separate reports of toxic culture, gender-based harassment, and unsafe training practices resulting in injury. My orders were to observe for 2 weeks and submit a recommendation. She paused. Shutdown or continuation? Quincy's voice cracked. Because of us? Because of what you represent. Dex's eyes moved across each of them. A system that prioritizes ego over education, dominance over development, performance over purpose. We didn't know. You didn't ask. Her voice cut clean. You saw someone different and decided they were less. You built an entire narrative without a single fact. That's not training culture. That's tribalism. And tribalism gets people killed in combat. The weight of that statement settled over the room like fallout. Chief Marlowe could have recommended immediate closure Friday night. This facility would be dismantled by end of month. Every Marine here would be reassigned. Your records would carry the stain of being part of a failed program. He let that sit. She didn't. Brock looked at Dex for the first time. Really looked. Why not? Dex sat back down. Because I saw something else too. Foundational skill, technical aptitude, the potential for excellence buried under layers of ego and bad leadership. She folded her hands again. You're not bad Marines. You're poorly guided ones. There's a difference, Winters. Which brings us to the decision point. Chief Marlowe has submitted a conditional recommendation. She pulled up a new document. 90-day Cultural Reformation Program. Chief Marlowe supervises. You comply with new protocols. Training methods are restructured. Command oversight is increased. If successful, the facility continues with a new charter emphasizing respect-based instruction. She looked at the 3 Marines. If you fail or refuse participation, formal charges proceed and this facility closes permanently. The air in the room felt thin. Ashford, this is a one-time offer. You have 60 seconds to decide, starting now. The clock on the wall ticked. Brock stared at his hands. The same hands that had cranked submissions too hard, that had grabbed for dominance instead of discipline. Quincy looked at the tablet that wasn't in his pocket because they'd confiscated it that morning. Callum's analytical mind was already running calculations. 90 days, 3 months, enough time to rebuild or enough rope to hang themselves. 45 seconds. 30. Callum stood first. I'm in. Teach me how to do this right. Quincy took a shaky breath. Yeah, I want to learn. I want to be better. Brock didn't stand. His jaw worked like he was chewing words too heavy to spit out. Pride and shame wrestling in the space behind his eyes. 15 seconds. 10. He stood, looked directly at Dex. Please, teach us. The word, please, came out like broken glass, but it came out. Dex nodded once. Okay. Ashford, then here are the new rules. He pulled up a presentation, stark, simple, non-negotiable. 1. No personal electronics during training hours. All phones surrendered at bay entrance. Violation results in immediate dismissal from program. 2. All training is filmed by facility cameras only. No social media posts about methods, techniques, or personnel without written authorization. 3. Safety protocols are absolute. Submissions released on first tap. Excessive force results in immediate suspension and review. 4. Belt hierarchy is abolished. Rank and skill are respected, but no one is untouchable. Everyone starts from the same baseline. 5. Chief Marlowe's authority in training matters supersedes all others. You question her methods through proper channels, not public challenges. 6. This program is voluntary. You can leave at any time, but if you leave, you don't come back. He looked at each Marine. These rules are effective immediately. You report to Bay 3 at 0600 tomorrow. Dress in plain PT gear. No logos, no branding. Just come ready to work. Winters. The formal charges are suspended pending successful completion of the 90-day program. Your records will be flagged but not permanently marked unless you fail. Consider this the only second chance you will receive in your careers. Webb spoke for the first time. Gentlemen, I've been doing this for 23 years. I've seen programs like this destroy people, and I've seen them rebuild them. Which one happens depends entirely on whether you can check your ego at the door and actually listen. He glanced at Dex. You've been given a gift, a teacher who knows more about real combat than anyone in this facility. Don't waste it. Ashford, dismissed. We'll see you tomorrow morning. The 3 Marines stood, saluted, and left in silence. When the door closed, Winters looked at Dex. You sure about this, Chief? 90 days is a long time to babysit grown men who should know better. They'll learn or they won't, Dex said. Either way, we'll have our answer, Ashford. And if they don't? Then the facility closes and I write the report I was originally sent to write. Fair enough, he stood. I'll have the updated protocols distributed by end of day. Anything else you need? Access to the equipment budget. Some of the gear is outdated. Done. Anything else? Dex paused. Permission to bring in an outside consultant, someone who understands reformation through discipline. Ashford raised an eyebrow. Who? Gunnery Sergeant retired Franklin Hayes. He ran the Marine Corps Martial Arts Program instructor course for 15 years. Now he consults on cultural issues in combat training environments. Webb nodded. I know Hayes, good man, tough but fair. I'll make the call, Ashford said. If he's available, he's approved. The meeting ended. Dex walked back across base alone. The afternoon sun was losing its heat, slipping toward that golden hour where everything looked better than it was. She passed groups of Marines who went quiet when she approached. Some nodded, some just stared. Word had spread that she wasn't leaving, that she was staying to fix what they'd broken. Reactions were mixed. Tuesday morning, 0545. Bay 3 looked different. The belt hierarchy board was gone, replaced by a simple plaque, Excellence Through Discipline. The walls had been stripped of highlight photos. In their place, printed quotes. Not motivational poster garbage, real words from real warriors. Bruce Lee. I fear not the man who has practiced 10,000 kicks once, but I fear the man who has practiced one kick 10,000 times. Miyamoto Musashi. There is nothing outside of yourself that can ever enable you to get better, stronger, richer, quicker, or smarter. Everything is within. And one from Captain Ethan Marlowe, words pulled from a training manual he'd written before his death. Combat is not about defeating your opponent. It's about perfecting yourself to the point where defeat is impossible. Brock, Callum, and Quincy entered at 05:58, plain gray PT gear, no logos, no phones, no swagger. They looked like privates on their first day. Dex was already there, standing in the center of the mat, barefoot, same plain clothing, hair pulled back, face neutral. Form up, they did. She walked a slow circle around them, studying posture, stance, the tiny tells that revealed how a person carried themselves when stripped of props and ego. Before we begin, I need to understand what you think you know. Halstead, define combat. Brock blinked. Physical confrontation between two or more opponents with the goal of... Wrong. Thorne, define combat. Callum thought for a moment. The application of force to neutralize a threat while minimizing risk to... Closer, but still wrong. Brennan. Quincy looked panicked. Fighting? No. Dex stopped in front of them. Combat is problem-solving under physical and psychological pressure. The person who solves the problem faster and more efficiently wins. That's it. Everything else, striking, grappling, weapons, tactics, all of that is just tools for solving the problem. She let that sink in. You've been training like combat is about dominance. It's not. It's about efficiency. She moved to the equipment wall, pulled down 3 heavy bags. Today we start from zero. No belts, no rank, no previous experience matters. We're building a new foundation. She tossed each of them a pair of focus mitts. Partner up. Halstead with Thorne. Brennan, you're with me. For the next 90 minutes, she broke them down to basics. Stance, weight distribution, hip rotation, breathing. Things they thought they knew, but had learned wrong or never learned at all. Every time someone's ego crept in, every time Brock started to add power instead of precision, every time Quincy rushed instead of feeling the rhythm, Dex stopped them. Reset, again. No yelling, no insults, just correction. Immediate, clinical, relentless. By 0800 they were exhausted. Not from physical exertion, from mental pressure. The constant awareness that every movement was being evaluated, every mistake noted, every shortcut identified and eliminated. Dex called them to center mat. Tomorrow, same time, bring water, bring focus, leave everything else outside. She looked at each of them. This is going to be the hardest thing you've ever done. Not because the techniques are complicated, because unlearning bad habits is harder than learning new ones. Your egos will fight you every step. Your pride will tell you this is beneath you. You'll want to quit. Quincy, what happens if we do? Then you prove me wrong about your potential. Brock, and if we stay? Then we find out what you're actually capable of. She dismissed them. They left in silence, muscles aching from movements that looked simple, but required control they'd never developed. The pattern repeated for 2 weeks. 0600 to 0800. Basics, fundamentals, the boring, unglamorous work of rebuilding from the ground up. Dex brought in Gunnery Sergeant Hayes during week 3. Hayes was 62, compact and weathered like driftwood, with eyes that had seen 3 wars and too many young men waste their potential on flash instead of foundation. He watched the 3 Marines run through their drills for 30 minutes without saying a word. Then he pulled Dex aside. They're fighting it, especially the big one. Halstead, I know. He's got talent, but his ego's like a tumor. It's gonna kill everything around it if you don't cut it out. I'm working on it, Hayes smiled, thin and sharp. You're being gentle, that's good. But gentle only works if they're willing to meet you halfway. If he doesn't bend soon, you'll have to break him. You ready for that? Dex felt the question land heavier than it should have. Was she ready? To break someone the way her instructors had tried to break her in BUD/S. To use pain as a teacher the way Ethan had warned her against. She looked through the observation window at Brock running through a basic hip rotation drill. His form was better than week 1, but his eyes still carried that resistance, that voice saying this was temporary. "If it comes to that," she said quietly, "I'll do what's necessary." Hayes studied her face. "You sure? Because breaking someone isn't the same as reforming them. One leaves scars, the other leaves strength." "I know the difference." "Do you?" Hayes's voice wasn't challenging, just honest. "Because I've seen a lot of good instructors cross that line without realizing it. They think they're teaching discipline, but they're really just teaching people to hide their fear better." Dex turned to face him fully. "What are you saying, Gunny?" "I'm saying your brother's method worked because he understood something most instructors don't. Pain doesn't make warriors. Purpose does." He gestured at the three Marines. "Those boys don't need to be broken. They need to understand why they're here, what they're actually building. Right now, they're just surviving your program. That's not the same as believing in it." The words hit like a punch to the solar plexus. Because he was right. She'd been so focused on technique, on protocol, on making them comply, that she'd forgotten to make them care. "So what do I do?" Hayes smiled. "You already know. You just need permission to do it." "Permission for what?" "To be human. To tell them why this matters to you, why you're here." He paused. "They don't know about Ethan's method. They don't know what you're trying to build. All they know is you're hard on them, and they don't understand why." Dex looked back through the window, watched the three Marines moving through drills with mechanical precision, but no soul. Hayes was right. She'd been teaching them how to fight. She hadn't taught them what they were fighting for. "Thanks, Gunny." "Any time, Chief. And Dex?" She turned back. "Your brother would be proud, not because you're tough, because you're willing to learn." After Hayes left, Dex stood alone in the observation room for 10 minutes, thinking about purpose and pain and the difference between breaking people and building them. Then she made a decision. The next morning, she changed the program. "Sit," she told the three Marines when they entered Bay 3 at 0600. They exchanged glances but sat. Dex sat with them, not in front of them, with them, on the same level. "I've been doing this wrong," she said. Brock blinked. Callum leaned forward slightly. Quincy just stared. "I've been teaching you technique without context, making you comply without understanding. That's not reformation. That's just indoctrination with better lighting." She looked at each of them. "So before we go any further, you need to know why I'm doing this, why I'm here, why any of this matters." She pulled out her phone, opened a photo, passed it to Brock. The image showed a younger Dex, maybe 22, in full combat gear standing next to a man who looked like her, but wasn't. He was taller, broader, with the same intense eyes and the same quiet intensity. "That's my brother, Captain Ethan Marlowe, taken in Afghanistan 6 months before he died." The three Marines went very still. "He developed the Marlowe method, the close-quarters combat system that JSOC uses now. But before he did that, he spent 10 years trying to figure out how to train people without destroying them." She took the phone back. "He saw what I'm seeing here. Talented people being ruined by instructors who thought dominance was the same as discipline, who confused pain with teaching." She stood, walked to Ethan's quote on the wall. "Combat is not about defeating your opponent. It's about perfecting yourself to the point where defeat is impossible." She turned back to them. "That's what we're building here. Not warriors who win by being meaner or tougher. Warriors who win by being better, more skilled, more controlled, more disciplined." She paused. "Ethan died before he could see his method adopted across the military. But I'm here to finish what he started, to prove that you don't have to break people to make them strong." Brock spoke first. His voice was quieter than usual. "Why didn't you tell us this before?" "Because you weren't ready to hear it. You were too busy defending your egos to listen to anything that challenged them." She sat back down. "But you're ready now. I can see it. The question is whether you believe it." "Callum." "Believe what?" "That you can be better than you were. That this isn't about me proving you're weak. It's about you discovering you're stronger than you thought. Quincy swallowed hard. What if we're not? What if we can't do this? Then we find out together. But you don't get to quit before you know. She looked at all three of them. So I'm asking you now, not as your instructor, as someone who believes you have potential you haven't tapped yet. Do you want to keep going? Actually going, not just surviving. The silence stretched. Then Brock said, "Yeah, I do." Callum, "Me too." Quincy nodded. "Let's do this." Dex stood. "Good. Then let's get to work." And from that day forward, everything changed. Not overnight, not magically, but gradually, like ice melting under steady pressure. By week 4, the basics had become less painful. Muscle memory was forming. Callum started asking technical questions that showed he was thinking deeper than the surface. Quincy's nervous energy was channeling into focus instead of chaos. Brock remained the hardest case, but even he was softening. The resistance in his eyes was fading, replaced by something else. Curiosity, maybe, or the first glimmers of genuine respect. Week 5, Friday afternoon. New recruit arrived. Private Sloan Barrett, 20 years old, blonde hair in a tight regulation bun, farm strong from growing up in Idaho hauling hay bales and fixing tractors. She'd scored perfect marks in basic training and requested assignment to advanced combatives. She walked into Bay 3 at 1400 hours, carrying her gear and a nervous kind of hope. Brock was running solo drills in the corner. He saw her, started to grin, started to say something that would have sounded like every other meathead comment she'd heard since joining the Marines. Then he saw Dex watching. The grin died. He walked over, extended his hand. "Private Barrett, welcome. I'm Corporal Halstead. We'll get you oriented and make sure you're trained properly." Sloan shook his hand, surprised. "Thank you, Corporal. We take training seriously here. Respect-based instruction. Chief Marlowe's the lead. She'll get you squared away." It was the first time Brock had deferred to anyone publicly since the program started. Dex nodded once. Progress. She spent an hour with Sloan, running through the basics, establishing baseline skill, explaining the program philosophy. When Sloan left, Dex found Brock still in the bay, working through kata movements he'd learned 3 weeks prior. She watched from the doorway. His form was better, not perfect, but measurably improved. The big theatrical movements had been replaced with efficiency. His breathing was controlled, his transitions smoother. He finished, bowed to empty air, and turned to find her watching. "Chief, didn't hear you come in. Your kata's improved. Still feels weird, all this formal stuff." "Formal isn't the point, control is." Brock nodded, then quietly, "I almost said something to Barrett, something I would have said 5 weeks ago." "I know, but I didn't." "I know that too." He sat down on the bench, rubbed his face with both hands. "This is harder than I thought it'd be. Not the physical stuff. The other part. Changing how I think. That's the real work." "Yeah." He looked up at her. "Can I ask you something?" "Go ahead." "That kid I hurt, Garrett, I keep thinking about that. The way I held the submission too long because I could. Because it made me feel, I don't know, powerful, I guess." His voice dropped. "How do you forgive yourself for that kind of thing?" Dex sat down next to him. Not close, just near enough to be present. "You don't forgive yourself. You become better. That's the only real apology." "Is it enough?" "It's all any of us have." Brock was quiet for a long time. Then, "My dad was a Marine, gunnery sergeant, tough as they come. He used to say weakness was a choice, that if you were soft, you deserved to get crushed." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I've been trying to prove I wasn't weak my whole life. Turns out I was just being an asshole." "You were being what you were taught." "That an excuse?" "No, it's context. What you do with it now is what matters." He nodded slowly, stood. "Thanks, Chief." "Halstead," he turned back. That thing you almost said to Barrett? The fact that you caught yourself? That's progress. Hold on to that. Something in his face shifted. Not quite a smile, but close. He left. Dex stayed in the empty bay for another hour, moving through forms in the fading light, thinking about all the people who'd told her she didn't belong in places like this. Week 7 brought the visiting delegation. Canadian Joint Task Force 2, Elite Special Operations. They'd requested a training exchange, wanted to observe modern combatives integration techniques. Ashford approved it as a test. If the reformation was working, it would show. The Canadians arrived Tuesday morning. 4 operators, 1 commander. Professional, respectful, the kind of quiet competence that came from doing hard things in hard places. Their commander, Major Rousseau, watched Dex run the 3 Marines through advanced flow drills. Partner kata, application of principles under pressure, defensive sequences that required perfect timing and zero ego. After 40 minutes, he leaned toward Ashford. This is exceptional instruction. Who developed the curriculum? Chief Marlowe. She rebuilt the program from scratch 2 months ago. Rousseau raised his eyebrows. Impressive. We've been struggling with cultural integration in our training pipeline. May I speak with her? Ashford nodded. During the break, Rousseau approached Dex. Chief Marlowe, your methodology is remarkable. We've tried similar reforms in our program but keep hitting resistance. How did you overcome it? I didn't overcome it. I gave them a choice. Change or fail. Then I made changing easier than failing. Through what mechanism? Consistency. Standards applied equally. No exceptions for ego or rank. And consequences that mattered. Rousseau nodded thoughtfully. Would you be willing to consult on our program? 2 weeks Canada, full accommodations provided. Dex glanced at Ashford. He gave a small nod. After this program concludes, week 14. Excellent, I'll coordinate with your command. The Canadians stayed for 2 more days. On the final day, they requested a demonstration. Dex looked at Brock, Callum, and Quincy. Your choice. Show them what you've learned. No pressure, no performance, just clean technique. The 3 Marines exchanged glances. Brock stepped forward. We're ready, Chief. They performed paired demonstrations. Brock and Callum showing the application of redirection principles under pressure. Quincy and Sloan running defensive flow drills that demonstrated control over chaos. No flash, no showboating, just technical excellence executed with quiet precision. When they finished, the Canadians applauded. Major Rousseau approached the 3 Marines personally. That was world-class instruction. You should be very proud. Brock surprised himself by saying, We're still learning, sir, but we're getting there. After the delegation left, Ashford pulled Dex aside. That went better than I expected. They're doing the work. Halstead especially, I've never seen that kid defer credit before. He's starting to understand that being good isn't about being better than everyone else. It's about being better than you were yesterday. You think they'll make it? All 90 days? Ask me at day 90. But privately, watching them help each other through cool-down stretches, actually communicating instead of competing, she thought maybe they would. Week 9 brought the first real test. A visiting Marine unit from Quantico, the officer candidate school instructors, known for their old-school approach and open disdain for soft, modern training methods. Their senior instructor, Gunnery Sergeant Kramer, had a reputation. Hard, traditional, believed in breaking people down through pain and intimidation. He watched the Bay 3 session for 20 minutes before speaking. This is what passes for combatives now? Looks like a yoga class. Dex didn't respond, just continued running the drill. Kramer walked onto the mat. With respect, Chief, real combat isn't this controlled. It's chaos, violence. These Marines need to be forged in fire, not guided through meditation. You're welcome to observe, Gunnery Sergeant, not to interrupt. I'm offering professional feedback. I didn't ask for it. Kramer's jaw tightened. Then maybe you should, because I see 3 Marines being coddled when they should be. Brock stood up. Gunnery Sergeant, with respect, Chief Marlowe's methods work. We're better fighters now than we were 2 months ago. Kramer looked at him like he'd grown a second head. Corporal, I wasn't addressing you. I know, Gunnery Sergeant, but you're addressing our instructor, and she's earned our trust. The bay went silent. Callum stood next. Gunnery Sergeant Kramer, before this program I thought combat was about dominance. Chief Marlowe taught me it's about problem solving. That one change made me twice as effective. Quincy stood last, and she taught us that respect isn't weakness. It's the foundation of everything else. Kramer stared at the 3 of them, then at Dex. You've got them well trained, Chief. I'll give you that. They train themselves, Gunnery Sergeant. I just provided the framework. Kramer left without another word, but the message was clear. The 3 Marines had defended their instructor, publicly. Now they were in the home stretch. 14 weeks of reformation compressed into behaviors and habits that were starting to look permanent. Brock's Instagram had transformed. No more shirtless flexing. No more combat footage set to aggressive music. Instead, educational content, technique breakdowns, essays on the importance of respect in training environments. His followers had grown to 425,000, comments filled with people saying they'd learned more from his recent posts than years of traditional training. Callum and Quincy had co-authored a technical manual, Integrated Combat Systems, bridging traditional and modern methodologies. It was under review by Naval Special Warfare Command for potential publication. Sloan had integrated seamlessly, her farm girl work ethic and lack of ego making her a natural fit for the reform culture. But it was a conversation in week 13 that changed everything. Late Friday night, Dex was alone in Bay 3, running through advanced kata, when Brock entered. Chief, got a minute? What's on your mind, Halstead? He sat on the bench, looking uncomfortable in a way that had nothing to do with physical pain. I got a message today from a woman, Marine. She's at Camp Pendleton dealing with the same kind of toxic bullshit we created here. Harassment, intimidation, the whole thing. He looked up. She reached out because she saw my Instagram posts, asked if the reformation was real or just PR. What did you tell her? That it was real, that we were different now, better. He paused. Then she asked if I'd come talk to her unit, share what we learned, help them change their culture. Dex sat down next to him. What did you say? I said I'd have to ask my instructor. He met her eyes. So I'm asking, can I go? Can I try to help them the way you helped us? Something warm and unexpected moved through Dex's chest. Yes, but not alone. Take Thorne and Brennan. Make it a team effort. Seriously? You've learned enough to teach, that's the whole point. Brock nodded slowly, then quietly, Thank you, Chief, for not giving up on us. I didn't do anything. You did the work. Yeah, but you made us believe the work mattered. That's the difference. He stood to leave, then turned back. My dad called last week, first time in 2 years. He'd seen my posts, said he didn't recognize me anymore. Brock's voice was tight. I told him that was the point. Then he left. Dex sat alone in the empty bay, thinking about fathers and brothers, and all the ways people carry the weight of other people's expectations until they either break or learn to put it down. She pulled out her phone, opened the photo folder she never looked at. Pictures of Ethan, young and grinning in desert camis, older and serious receiving his Navy Cross. The last photo, taken 2 weeks before he died, showing him with his training class, arm around a young operator who looked terrified and determined in equal measure. Dex had that same look once. Maybe she still did. She sent a text to Rachel. "They're going to make it. All of them." Rachel responded immediately, "I'm proud of you." Dex typed, "Me too," for the first time in a long time. Then she put the phone away, stood, and continued her kata in the quiet darkness, moving like water given form, like silence given purpose, like a storm that had finally learned when to break and when to simply be. Week 14 started Monday, the final week. Ashford had scheduled a formal review for Friday, attestation ceremony if successful, program closure if not. Everything they'd built came down to 5 more days. But Tuesday morning, something unexpected arrived. A directive from Naval Special Warfare Command. Dex read it twice, then walked to Ashford's office. He looked up when she entered, saw her face. "What happened?" She handed him the tablet. He read. His expression shifted. "They want you in Virginia. Immediate reassignment. Fort Bragg's program is in worse shape than this one was. They need intervention before someone gets killed." "When do you leave?" "Friday, after the ceremony." Ashford leaned back in his chair. "That's fast. It's the job. These Marines, they don't know yet? I'll tell them Thursday. They're not going to take it well, especially Halstead. They'll be fine. They don't need me anymore." "You sure about that?" Dex looked out the window toward Bay 3. "They've got each other. That's better than any instructor." Thursday afternoon, after the final full training session, Dex gathered them in Bay 3. Brock, Callum, Quincy, Sloan, the 4 people who'd rebuilt themselves into something better. "Tomorrow's ceremony is also a goodbye. I'm being reassigned to Fort Bragg, cultural intervention for their Special Forces training program." Silence. Then Quincy. "When?" "Friday evening." Brock's face went through several emotions before settling on acceptance. "Makes sense. They need you more than we do now. You'll continue training under Staff Sergeant Webb. He'll maintain the standards we've established. Will you come back?" "If you need me, but I don't think you will." Sloan, quiet until now. "You changed everything here, Chief. These guys went from being the worst kind of Marines to teachers. That's because of you. That's because of them. I just provided the framework." Brock stood, extended his hand. "Thank you, Chief Marlowe, for seeing what we could be when we couldn't see it ourselves." She shook his hand. "Thank you for doing the work." The others stood, shook hands, said quiet goodbyes that carried the weight of transformation. When they left, Gideon Webb entered. "Heard you're leaving us." "Orders. Those Marines, they're going to keep this going. You built something real here." "They built it. I just pointed them in the right direction." Webb smiled. "Your brother used to say the same thing, that the best instructors make themselves obsolete." He was right. He usually was. Webb handed her a folder. "This arrived this morning. Figured you'd want to see it before you left." Dex opened it. Inside, official commendation letters, one from each of the 3 Marines, recommending Chief Marlowe for the Navy and Marine Corps Commendation Medal for exceptional leadership and cultural reformation. Her hands didn't shake, but it was close. "They submitted those without telling you," Webb said. "Wanted it to be a surprise." "It is. Good surprise?" "Yeah, good surprise." Friday morning, the ceremony. Building 12's main hall, 200 people in attendance. Marines, Navy personnel, base command staff, even Major Rousseau, who'd flown back from Canada specifically for this. Lieutenant Ashford stood at the podium. 90 days ago, this facility was on the verge of permanent closure. Toxic culture, unsafe practices, a failure of leadership at multiple levels. He looked at the 3 Marines standing at attention in dress uniforms. "Today, we're here to recognize not just reformation, but transformation." He called them forward one at a time. "Corporal Brock Halstead, You entered this program as the embodiment of everything wrong with modern combatives culture. You exited as a teacher, a leader, and an example of what's possible when ego surrenders to excellence. Brock received his certification with hands that didn't shake. Sergeant Callum Thorne, your analytical mind was always your strength, but you've learned to pair it with humility and empathy. Your technical manual will influence training across multiple services. Callum accepted his certification with quiet pride. Lance Corporal Quincy Brennan, you've transformed from someone who used platforms to mock into someone who uses them to educate. Your digital outreach has reached over 2 million people with messages of respect-based training. Quincy's grin was genuine. Then Ashford gestured to Dex. And Chief Petty Officer Declan Marlowe, you were sent here to evaluate a failing program. Instead, you rebuilt it from the ground up. You took 3 Marines who deserved punishment and gave them purpose. You took a toxic culture and transformed it into a model others will study. He picked up a shadow box from the table beside him. This facility is being renamed. Effective immediately, Building 12, Bay 3, is now the Marlowe Combat Wing. He unveiled the plaque. In memory of Captain Ethan Marlowe, DEVGRU, who taught us combat is geometry, not anger. In honor of Chief Declan Marlowe, who taught us respect is a force multiplier. Dex's vision blurred, just for a second. Then she blinked it clear and accepted the shadow box. Inside, the plaque. A photo of all 4 Marines with her, taken last week, all of them bowing in perfect synchronization. And beneath it, folded carefully, Ethan's Navy Cross citation. Webb had done that. She knew immediately. The ceremony ended with applause that felt genuine. Afterward, people approached her, shook hands, said things that blurred together into a general sense of accomplishment and goodbye. The 3 Marines found her last. Brock handed her a framed photograph. We got you something. It showed all 5 of them, the day after the Canadian delegation visit, covered in sweat, grinning like idiots who just discovered something they didn't know they'd been missing. On the back, 3 signatures in one sentence. The student becomes the teacher. The teacher becomes the legend. You guys didn't have to. Yeah, we did, Callum said. Quincy, will you actually come back if we need you? Promise. Good, because Pendleton's asking questions. Wants to know if you can do for them what you did here. One facility at a time, Brennan. Brock. Chief, I just want to say, you were right about all of it. Combat is problem solving. Respect is foundation. Silence is strength. Everything. I know, he laughed. Of course you do. They left. Dex packed her quarters that evening. 1 duffel, 1 folder, 1 shadow box that meant more than any medal. At 2100 hours, her phone rang. Unknown number. Chief Marlowe? Speaking. This is Command Master Chief Rivera, Nav Spec War. I'm calling about Fort Bragg. I received the orders, Master Chief. Good, but there's additional context you should know. The situation there is worse than Camp Lejeune was. 3 hospitalizations in 2 months. 1 sexual harassment investigation. Command wants it fixed, or they're shutting down the entire Special Forces Combatives program. Understood. Chief Marlowe, what you did at Lejeune, that's not supposed to be possible. Reforming culture in 90 days, turning hostile actors into advocates, that's unprecedented. The Marines did the work, Master Chief. I just created conditions for success. Well, create them again at Bragg, because if you can't fix this, nobody can. The call ended. Dex sat on her rack, looking at the framed photo, the shadow box, the letter from her brother that never left her folder. Be the storm they never see coming. She'd been that storm at Lejeune. Now Fort Bragg needed the same thing. She packed the last of her gear, took 1 final walk through Bay 3, now the Marlowe Combat Wing, and read the words on the wall one last time. Excellence through discipline. The lights turned off automatically at 2200. She walked out into the North Carolina night, where a government sedan waited to take her to the airport. Behind her, the base stood quiet and ready. Ahead of her, another fight. But this time, she wasn't afraid, because she'd learned what her brother knew all along. The real battle wasn't against other people. It was against the worst versions of ourselves. And that was a fight worth having. Every single time. Fort Bragg, North Carolina. 6 months later. The Special Forces Combatives program had been harder than Lejeune. Deeper institutional rot. More entrenched resistance. Instructors who'd been running the same program the same way for 15 years and saw no reason to change. But Dex had brought Hayes with her this time, and together they'd rebuilt it. Not perfectly, not completely, but enough. Injury rates down 48%, harassment complaints down to 2, both handled immediately and transparently. Retention up. More importantly, the culture had shifted. You could feel it walking through the bays. Less swagger, more substance. Ego replaced with quiet competence. It was Saturday morning. Dex was in her apartment reviewing final reports when her phone buzzed. Brock. Chief, it's Halstead. She sat up straighter. Brock, everything okay? Yeah, better than okay, actually. We just got word. The Marlowe Combat Wing model is being adopted across 3 more Marine bases. Camp Pendleton, Quantico, and Parris Island. They want us to help implement. That's excellent news. Gets better. Callum and Quincy's manual got approved for publication. Naval Special Warfare Command is making it required reading for all combatives instructors across the service. Dex felt something warm move through her chest. You've all earned this. We wanted to tell you first, before it goes public. A pause. There's something else, though. What? Remember that Marine who contacted me? The one at Pendleton dealing with harassment? I remember. We went out there last month. Me, Callum, Quincy. Ran a 2-week intensive with their program. Chief, it was bad. Really bad. Worse than we were. His voice tightened. But we used everything you taught us. Every principle. Every technique. And it's working. They're changing. That's what matters. The commander out there asked if we'd consider permanent assignment. Build a traveling reformation team. Go to facilities that need intervention. Dex smiled. What did you tell him? That I'd think about it. Wanted your input first. My input is you don't need my input anymore, Brock. You know what's right. Trust that. Yeah, I guess I do. He laughed quietly. Weird how that works, huh? 6 months ago, I couldn't trust anyone but myself. Now I trust myself because of everyone else. That's called growth. Chief, I gotta ask, are you coming back? Even just to visit? I'll be there next month. Naval Special Warfare is doing a formal review of the Lejeune program. They want me present. Then we'll see you soon. And Chief? Yeah? Thank you. For everything. For seeing what we could be. You're welcome. But Brock, you need to understand something. I didn't see what you could be. I saw what you already were underneath all the bullshit. My job was just removing the bullshit. She could hear him smile through the phone. Copy that. See you next month. The line went dead. Dex sat with her coffee, watching morning light paint her apartment walls the color of old gold, thinking about how transformation never happened in straight lines. It happened in spirals. Progress in setback, growth in struggle, always circling back to the same questions, but from higher ground. Her phone buzzed again. Different number. This one, she recognized. Rachel, her sister. Hey, Rach. Did you see the news? What news? Check your email. Military Times just published a feature. You're going to want to read it. Dex opened her laptop, pulled up her email, found the article Rachel had forwarded. The headline, The Silent Revolution, How One Navy SEAL Changed Marine Corps Combat Culture. She scanned the text. Interviews with Brock, Callum, Quincy. Quotes from Lieutenant Ashford. Analysis of the Marlowe Combat Wing model and its expansion across multiple bases. Photos of the reformed Bay 3, the new training protocols, the Marines who'd gone from toxic actors to cultural reformers. And in the center, a photo of Dex she didn't remember being taken. She was standing in Bay 3, barefoot on the mat, demonstrating a technique to 4 Marines who watched with the kind of attention that came from genuine respect, not fear. The caption read, Chief Petty Officer Declan Marlowe conducting instruction at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. She looked like her brother in that photo. Same intensity, same quiet authority, same understanding that real strength didn't need to announce itself. "You still there?" Rachel asked. "Yeah, I'm here." "You okay? This is a lot of attention." "I'm fine." "Dex, you reformed an entire training culture in 90 days. That's not fine, that's exceptional. You're allowed to feel proud." "I didn't do it alone." "I know, but you started it. That counts for something." Rachel's voice softened. "Ethan would be so proud of you. You know that, right?" The words hit harder than expected. Dex's throat tightened. "I hope so. I know so. He told me once, years ago, that you were the strongest person he'd ever met. Not physically, emotionally. He said you had this ability to see people's potential even when they couldn't see it themselves." Rachel paused. "Looks like he was right." "Rach, let yourself have this, Dex. Let yourself be proud. You've earned it." They talked for another 20 minutes about normal things. Rachel's kids, her husband's new job, the backyard renovation they were planning. Civilian life, simple and uncomplicated. The kind of existence Dex had never quite figured out how to want. When they hung up, Dex sat with the Military Times article still open on her screen. The final paragraph caught her attention. When asked about her methodology, Chief Marlowe stated, "I don't reform people. I create conditions where they can reform themselves. The choice to change always belongs to them. My job is making that choice easier than staying the same." It's a philosophy that's transforming not just individual Marines, but the entire culture of military combat training. She closed the laptop. Outside her window, Fort Bragg was waking up, trucks rolling, personnel moving. The machinery of military life grinding forward like it always did. Her phone rang a third time. This number she definitely knew. "Master Chief Rivera." "Chief Marlowe, have you seen the Times article?" "Just finished reading it." "Good, because NAVSPEC War Command wants to discuss expansion of your program. We're looking at Army, Air Force, even some joint task force applications. This could become the standard across all services." Dex stood, walked to her window, watched the base move below her. "That's ambitious, Master Chief." "Your results aren't ambitious. They're proven. Lejeune's injury rate dropped 63% in your 90 days. Harassment complaints went to 0. Retention improved. Performance metrics across every category went up." Rivera's voice carried weight. "That's not luck. That's methodology worth replicating. The methodology only works if the people implementing it believe in it. Then we train them to believe in it. The way you train those Marines. It's not that simple." "I know it's not simple, Chief, but it's necessary. We've got facilities across the military dealing with the same problems Lejeune had. Toxic culture, unsafe practices, people getting hurt because leadership allows ego to override education. You proved there's a better way. Now we need to scale it." Dex watched a formation of soldiers running PT below her window. Young, strong, full of the kind of confidence that could become either excellence or arrogance, depending on who taught them the difference. "What exactly are you proposing, Master Chief?" "Temporary duty assignment, 6 months. You develop a standardized training program for cultural reformation instructors. Create curriculum, protocols, evaluation metrics. Then we deploy teams across high-need facilities to implement." That's a lot of bureaucracy for something that works because it's personal, which is why you'd have final approval on everything. No committees, no dilution. Your vision, properly resourced and scaled. Dex considered, I'd need certain conditions. Name them. First, any instructor implementing this program has to be an operator. Real combat experience, not admin staff or career trainers who've never seen action. Agreed. Second, facilities have to volunteer for intervention. No forced implementations. Cultural change doesn't work if people are coerced into it. Reasonable. Third, I select my team personally, people I trust, people who understand what we're actually trying to do. Done. Anyone specific in mind? Gunnery Sergeant Franklin Hayes, Staff Sergeant Gideon Webb, she paused, and 3 Marines from Camp Lejeune, Halstead, Thorne, and Brennan. Rivera was quiet for a moment. You want to use the same Marines you reformed as your Reformation instructors? They understand the journey better than anyone. They've lived it. That's either brilliant or insane. It's both. That's why it'll work. Rivera laughed. All right, Chief. I'll get the paperwork started. You report to NAVSPEC War headquarters in 2 weeks. We'll hash out the details then. Copy that, Master Chief. And Marlowe, this matters. What you're doing, it could change everything. Let's hope so. The call ended. Dex stood at her window for a long time, thinking about systems and people, and the space between what things were and what they could become. Her phone buzzed with a text. Brock, just got a call from NAVSPEC War. They want us for something called Reformation Instructor Training. Any idea what that's about? Dex typed back. You'll find out in 2 weeks. Pack for 6 months. Brock, are you serious? Dex, always. Brock, this is incredible. Callum and Quincy just got the same call. We're doing this together? If you want to. Hell yes, we want to. This is everything. She smiled at her phone, sent one more message. Then get ready. The real work starts now. 2 weeks later, Naval Special Warfare Command Headquarters, Dam Neck, Virginia. The conference room held 12 people. Dex at the head of the table, Master Chief Rivera to her right, Gunnery Sergeant Hayes and Staff Sergeant Webb across from each other. Brock, Callum, and Quincy together on one side, still looking slightly awed to be in this room, and 5 other operators Dex had personally selected from various commands, people she'd worked with over the years, people who understood that real strength came from discipline, not dominance. Rivera opened the briefing. Welcome to what we're calling Project Reformation. Over the next 6 months, you will develop, test, and implement a standardized cultural intervention program for military combat training facilities. Chief Marlowe has operational authority. What she says goes. Questions? One of the new operators, Lieutenant Commander Holt, raised his hand. What's our success metric? How do we measure cultural change? Dex answered. 3 data points. First, injury reduction. If people are training safely, injuries drop. Second, retention rates. If culture improves, people stay. Third, and most important, self-reporting. We survey trainees anonymously. Ask them if they feel respected, supported, challenged appropriately. That tells us more than any statistic. What about resistance? Some facilities won't want outsiders telling them they're broken. Then we don't tell them they're broken. We offer them tools to become better. The facilities that want our help get it. The ones that don't, we document and move on. Webb, timeline for development phase? 4 weeks. We build the curriculum here, test it on a volunteer facility, refine based on results. Then we deploy to 3 sites simultaneously for full implementation. Callum, which 3 sites? That depends on who requests intervention and meets our criteria. Quincy, what are the criteria? Command buy-in, voluntary participation, willingness to implement changes even if they're uncomfortable. Dex looked around the table. We're not fixing facilities that don't want to be fixed. We're enabling facilities that do. The next 4 weeks were brutal. 12-hour days, building curriculum from scratch, documenting every principle, every technique, every lesson learned from Lejeune and Fort Bragg. translating lived experience into teachable methodology. Brock, Callum, and Quincy proved invaluable. They remembered what it felt like to resist change, what arguments their egos had used, what finally broke through the resistance. "The thing that got me," Brock said during one late-night session, "was when you stopped arguing with my logic and just showed me I was wrong. The demonstration, that first fight where you put me down in 4 seconds, my brain couldn't rationalize that away." "So physical proof matters more than verbal argument," Dex said, typing notes. "For some people, yeah, but not everyone." Callum gestured at his own documentation. "I needed the technical explanation, the biomechanics, the physics of why your way worked better. Once I understood the science, the ego couldn't argue anymore. And I needed to see the social proof," Quincy added. "When Brock and Callum changed, when I saw it actually working for them, that's when I believed it could work for me." Dex compiled it all, built a framework that accounted for different learning styles, different resistance patterns, different paths to the same destination. By week 3, they had a working curriculum. By week 4, they had a volunteer facility, Marine Corps Air-Ground Combat Center in 29 Palms, California. The commanding officer there had read the Military Times article and requested intervention. Dex's team deployed for a 2-week pilot program. 29 Palms was different from Lejeune, desert instead of coastal, bigger, more transient population. But the problems were familiar: toxic instructors, unsafe practices, culture that rewarded aggression over skill. Dex ran the same playbook: observation, documentation, controlled demonstration when challenged, then the offer: change or stay the same. Your choice. 40 Marines entered the program, 38 completed it. The 2 who didn't weren't punished. They were simply moved to different assignments. No drama, no theatrics, just consequences that matched choices. At the end of 2 weeks, injury rates had dropped 40%. Anonymous surveys showed 76% of participants felt the culture had improved significantly. The commanding officer called it a success and requested the program become permanent. Back at Dam Neck, Rivera reviewed the results. "This works. We need to scale immediately." 3 facilities were selected for full deployment: Marine Corps Base Camp Pendleton, Fort Benning Army Infantry School, Nellis Air Force Base Combat Control School. Dex split her team. Hayes and Webb took Pendleton with 2 of the new operators. Brock, Callum, and Quincy took Fort Benning with 1 support officer. Dex took Nellis with the remaining 2. They deployed simultaneously. 90 days, 3 facilities, same methodology adapted to different service cultures. The results varied, but the trend was consistent. Everywhere the program was implemented properly, culture improved. Injuries decreased. Retention increased. People reported feeling more respected, more challenged, more supported. Not every facility achieved Lejeune-level transformation. Some had deeper problems. Some had leadership that paid lip service to change, but undermined it privately. Some had institutional resistance too strong to overcome in 90 days. But even in the difficult cases, progress happened. Seeds were planted. Alternative paths were demonstrated. People saw that another way was possible. By the end of 6 months, Project Reformation had touched 9 facilities across 4 services. The data was compelling enough that NAVSPEC-WAR recommended permanent program status. Dex returned to Dam Neck for final briefings and discovered something waiting in her temporary office. A package, no return address, postmarked from Okinawa, Japan. She opened it carefully. Inside, a photograph, black and white, old, showing a young Marine in the 1950s standing in a dojo, surrounded by Japanese karate masters. The Marine was tall, serious, looking at the camera with a kind of intensity that transcended decades. A note was attached in shaky handwriting. "Chief Marlowe, I read about your work in the Times. This photo is my grandfather, Captain James Barrett, USMC. He studied Shotokan in Okinawa in 1955 and brought it back to the Marines. Started the first karate program at Quantico. He believed martial arts could transform military culture, make it more disciplined, more respectful. He died before seeing it happen. But you're doing it now. He would be proud. So am I. Sloan Barrett. Dex's hands trembled slightly. She hadn't realized that Sloan came from lineage that stretched back to the very beginning of karate in the American military. She set the photo on her desk, next to the shadow box from Lejeune, next to Ethan's letter that never left her sight. 3 generations, same mission, different methods, same truth. That real warriors weren't made through dominance, but through discipline. Not through fear, but through respect. Her phone rang, Ashford from Lejeune. Chief Marlowe, got news you'll want to hear. I'm listening. The Marlowe Combat Wing just graduated its 50th class. 500 Marines total have gone through the program in the last 6 months. 0 harassment complaints, 0 serious injuries. Retention rate is 94%, highest in the entire Marine Corps. That's excellent, Lieutenant. It gets better. Command is making it the model for all future combatives facilities. Every new instructor has to complete a Marlowe Method certification before they can teach. He paused. You built something that's going to outlive all of us, Chief. We built it, not just me. Yeah, but you started it. That's the hard part. After the call ended, Dex walked outside into the Virginia afternoon. The air smelled like salt and possibility. She found a bench overlooking the water and sat down, letting 6 months of constant work settle into her bones. Her phone buzzed with a message. Group text from Brock, Callum, and Quincy. Brock. Fort Benning program just got approved for permanent status. They want us to stay and run it. Callum. We're considering it, but wanted to check with you first. Is this what you wanted? For us to become the thing we used to hate? Instructors who actually give a damn? Dex smiled and typed back. This is exactly what I wanted. Go build something good. Brock, copy that. And Chief, thank you for everything, for never giving up on us even when we'd given up on ourselves. Dex, you never gave up on yourselves. You just forgot how to see your own potential. My job was reminding you. Callum, will we see you again? Dex, count on it. She put the phone away and sat watching the water, thinking about cycles and spirals and the way good things propagated when you built them on the right foundation. 3 months later, the call came that changed everything. Dex was back at Fort Bragg, wrapping up her work there, preparing for her next assignment. The Special Forces program had stabilized. Culture was better, not perfect, but measurably improved. Her phone showed an unfamiliar number. She almost didn't answer. Marlowe, Chief, this is Admiral Catherine Reeves, NAVSPEC War Commander. Dex stood immediately. Admiral, how can I help you? I've been reviewing the Reformation Project results. Impressive doesn't begin to cover it. You've fundamentally changed how we approach cultural issues in combat training. Thank you, Admiral. Which is why I'm offering you a choice. You can return to active SEAL team operations. Your Team 7 commander has requested you back. Or you can accept a new position we're creating specifically for this work. What position? Director of Cultural Development and Combat Training Reform. You'd have authority across all Naval Special Warfare training facilities. Budget, staff, autonomy to implement programs as you see fit. Reeves paused. It's a desk job in title, but in practice, you'd be doing exactly what you've been doing, just with official backing and resources. Dex walked to her window, looked out at the base that had challenged her in different ways in Lejeune. Can I think about it? You have 48 hours. After that, I need an answer. The call ended. Dex sat with the decision for 2 days, called Rachel, called Webb, called Hayes, even called Brock, who laughed and said, Chief, you're asking the guy you reformed for advice on whether to keep reforming people? That's some meta shit right there. So what should I do? What do you want to do? That was the question. What did she want? She pulled out Ethan's letter, read it for the thousandth time. Make them better, even when they don't deserve it. Especially then. That night she made her decision. She called Admiral Reeves. I accept the position, Admiral, on one condition. Name it. I report to you directly. No intermediary command structures. If I'm going to do this, I need the authority to act without bureaucratic interference. Agreed. When can you start? 30 days. I have one more thing to do first. What's that? Go back to where it started. 4 weeks later, Dex walked through the gates of Camp Lejeune for the first time in 8 months. The place looked the same, but felt different, like returning to a house you'd grown up in and finding it smaller than you remembered. She made her way to Building 12, the Marlow Combat Wing. Bay 3 was full, a class in session. 50 Marines moving through partner drills with precision and focus. The instructor was someone she didn't recognize, young, professional, running the techniques she'd developed with the same care she demanded. Staff Sergeant Webb saw her from the observation area and grinned. Chief Marlow, welcome home. This isn't home, Gideon. It's just where I learned something important. What's that? That broken things can be fixed if you care enough to do the work. They watched the class for a while in comfortable silence. Heard you got promoted, Webb said. Director of Cultural Development. That's a hell of a title. It's a hell of a responsibility. You'll be good at it. You've been doing it unofficially for months anyway. The class ended. The Marines bowed to each other, to their instructor, to the dojo itself. Then they filed out with the kind of quiet professionalism that came from genuine discipline. One Marine lingered, approached Dex and Webb with recognition on his face. Chief Marlow? I'm Corporal Davies. I went through the program 4 months ago. Just wanted to say thank you. This place changed my life. How so? I was heading down a bad path, anger issues, fighting outside of training, almost got kicked out. He gestured at the bay. But this program taught me that strength isn't about hurting people. It's about controlling yourself even when you could hurt people. That one idea saved my career. I'm glad it helped. It did more than help, Chief. It gave me a different way to be, a better way. He extended his hand. So thank you for building this. Dex shook his hand, watched him leave. Webb chuckled. You get a lot of that? More than I expected. Get used to it. You built something that matters. People remember that. That evening, Dex stood alone in Bay 3 after everyone else had gone. The space was quiet except for the hum of ventilation and the distant sound of base operations winding down. She walked to the center mat, took off her boots, and began to move. Kata. The same form she'd done that first morning 8 months ago when a janitor had watched and seen something he recognized. Heian Shodan. Teki Nidan. Basai Dai. Movement as meditation. Technique as prayer. She finished and stood in the silence, breathing controlled, mind clear. You know, he'd be really proud of you. She turned. Gideon Webb stood in the doorway, hands in pockets, watching with the expression of someone who'd seen a lot of things, but never stopped being impressed by excellence. My brother? Yeah, Ethan. He used to talk about you when we served together. Said you were the real warrior in the family, that you had something he didn't. What was that? Patience, the ability to see potential in people and wait for them to see it themselves. Webb walked onto the mat. He was brilliant, best combat instructor I ever met, but he was impatient, wanted results immediately. You're different. You understand that real change takes time. Dex looked at the plaque on the wall, her brother's name, her own name, a legacy she never asked for but had learned to carry. I'm just trying to do what he would have done. No, Webb said quietly, you're doing what he couldn't, and that's okay. That's how it's supposed to work. Each generation takes what the previous one built and makes it better. He left her alone with that thought. Dex packed her bag, took one last look at the bay that had changed everything, and walked out into the North Carolina night. Her flight left at 0600. New assignment, new challenges, New facilities full of people who didn't know yet that they could be better. But she knew, and that was enough. 1 year after that, Dex stood in front of a conference room filled with 200 combat instructors from across all military services. The annual Combat Training Summit, usually a place for demonstrations and equipment sales and political posturing. This year, Admiral Reeves had given Dex the keynote. She stood at the podium looking out at faces that ranged from skeptical to curious to openly hostile. She didn't use slides at first, didn't need them. My name is Chief Petty Officer Declan Marlowe. 3 years ago, I was sent to evaluate a Marine Corps facility for potential closure. That facility was toxic, unsafe, run by ego instead of excellence. I was supposed to recommend shutting it down. She paused. Instead, I rebuilt it. And in doing so, I learned something that changed how I understand our entire profession. The room was silent. We talk about making warriors, about forging soldiers and Marines and airmen who can survive combat and complete missions. But we've forgotten something crucial. Warriors aren't made through dominance. They're made through discipline. Not through fear, but through respect. Not by breaking people down, but by building them up to their full potential. She clicked to the first slide. A photo of Bay 3 at Lejeune. Before. This is what toxic culture looks like. Injury rates through the roof. Harassment complaints constant. People leaving the service because the training environment was worse than combat. Next slide. Bay 3 after Reformation. This is what happens when you rebuild culture on respect. Same people, same facility, completely different outcomes. 0 serious injuries in 6 months. 0 harassment complaints. 94% retention rate. She walked away from the podium, stood in front of the audience. I'm not here to tell you your programs are broken. I'm here to offer you tools to make them better. Because every single person in this room became an instructor for the same reason. To prepare the next generation for the realities of combat. To give them the skills and the mindset to survive and succeed. She looked across the faces. We can't do that if we're teaching them that might makes right, that aggression equals strength, that respect is weakness. So I'm asking you to consider a different approach, one that's been proven across 14 facilities and 4 services. One that reduces injuries, improves retention, and creates warriors who are disciplined, not just dangerous. She returned to the podium. Over the next 3 days, my team will be conducting workshops on cultural reformation methodologies. Attendance is voluntary. No one will be judged for coming or not coming. But if you're interested in learning a better way, we'll be here. She stepped back from the podium. Hayes and Webb ran sessions on practical implementation. The questions were hard, the skepticism real, but so was the hunger for solutions. By the end of the summit, 63 facilities had requested full Reformation program implementation. It was more than they could handle immediately, but it was a start. That night, after the final session, Dex's team gathered at a bar near the convention center. Brock raised his beer. To Chief Marlowe, who saw what we could be when we couldn't see shit. To the woman who proved that changing culture is possible. To the teacher who taught us that silence is strength and respect is everything. They drank. Then Brock looked at Dex seriously. What's next for you, Chief? 63 facilities need programs. I'm going to make sure they get them. That's a lot of work. That's the job. Need help? Dex smiled. Always. The night ended with stories and laughter, and the kind of camaraderie that came from people who'd been through fire together and come out stronger. When Dex finally made it back to her hotel room, she found an email waiting. From Rachel. Dex, saw the coverage of your keynote. Mom would have been so proud. Ethan would have been so proud. I'm so proud. You're changing the world in ways most people never will. Don't forget to take care of yourself while you're taking care of everyone else. Love you. Our Dex typed back. Love you too. And I promise I'm okay. Better than okay. I finally found what I'm supposed to be doing. She closed the laptop and pulled out the photo Sloan had sent. Captain James Barrett in Okinawa, teaching karate to Marines 70 years ago. 4 generations now, same mission. And a 5th generation coming up through programs built on respect instead of dominance. Young instructors who'd learned a different way and would teach it to the next group who would teach it to the next. A legacy that would outlive all of them. Dex set the photo on the nightstand next to Ethan's letter and the shadow box from Lejeune. Then she lay down and closed her eyes, thinking about spirals and cycles and the long, slow work of making things better. The fight wasn't over. It would never be over. But for the first time in her life, Dex understood that some fights weren't meant to be won. They were meant to be fought, every day, with discipline and patience and the quiet certainty that respect was stronger than dominance, that silence was more powerful than noise, that the real warriors were the ones who lifted people up instead of breaking them down. She fell asleep to the sound of distant traffic and the ghost of her brother's voice saying what he always said, "Be the storm they never see coming." She had been, she still was, and tomorrow she'd do it all again. Because that was the work, that was the mission, that was enough.